Welcome, guys, to the JYM LYFE Podcast. As always, I like to sit down with the person who you guys don't get the opportunity to sit down with, my business partner, what I consider to be the smartest man, most qualified guy in fitness, nutrition, and supplementation, Dr. Jim Stoppani. So, Jim, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for watching as well.
So, look, a lot of times you and I don't have that opportunity to sit down and just chat like we used to, and I think that was probably some of the best content that we were ever going to get, because I've always represented just the general consumer, and so I always have questions on their behalf. I'm, listening to the gym army. I'm listening to the consumers out there, and just being 44 years old now myself, I've been in business now for over 20 years. I've learned a lot, but I also know as much as I've learned, I've also aged appropriately to learn more things that are new.
44, you're still a baby.
Yeah, well,
I'll be 57 soon.
I know.
So.
You were 44 when we started this, right?
Yes.
It's crazy. It's been 12 years.
Now you're where I was.
I can't see,
Yep.
I can't see. Carry around a little bit more body fat than what I'd like to. So, yeah.
Never my problem.
And it's never been your problem at all. No, you're like a walking project. But, so one of the things that comes up, and I think what's going to end up happening in the next year, is we're going to see a health and fitness craze like we've never seen. I actually really like the fact of RFK coming in. He's a supplement guy, he's a fitness guy, he's in his 70s. I think he's going to set a lot of things, kind of like creating a culture of fitness. He's down here at Gold's Gym. I see him, I follow him. I think there's just going to be just a phenomenon of health and fitness and general wellness. We kind of see it now. We've seen it for the last, several years. But I really believe that in the next year, we're going to start seeing like this culture of health and wellness, especially for men, and kind of getting back to, like the 80s. If you remember, you see, the Rockies and the Stallones, and there was a culture of super fit, like muscle guys, men wanting to be that alpha man. And, but one of the things I always am curious about your perspective is, as guys get older, I think it's important that, that they stay in touch with like some of the things that they need to be aware of. What are some of the most critical things that as you age that men should start looking or becoming more aware of in their health and fitness as they age that they might be missing? What are some key components?
Yeah, the thing that doctors do well with men is they watch their heart health, right? It's the number one killer in men is heart disease. So doctors are good at monitoring guys as they age on heart health. What they are terrible at is the muscle loss and the drop in testosterone. And those two things kind of go hand in hand together, but they're also independent of one another. For example, if you look at the normal range of testosterone, right, the high end is 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, right? So if you're up there, that's great. But the low end of the scale is now around 200 nanograms. So if a guy goes to his doctor and says, I'm feeling tired and sluggish, I have no sex drive, the doctor goes, oh, take a look at your testosterone. He runs his testosterone, guy comes back at 250 nanograms. Doctor goes, you're fine. You're in the normal range. Bull. Sure, he's in the normal range, but what the hell is the normal range, right? That's a big range. And personally, we know that a guy who's in close to 200 feels completely different than a guy who's around 1,000. Their daily energy levels, their sex drive, right? Focus. So, why do they allow this to happen, right? And, it's the medical society's issue is that, our testosterone levels are dropping. Overall, in young men. We look at young men today.
Why do you think that is, though?
There's a number of environmental factors that,
like food, obviously food,
toxins that you're exposed to.
Because I know a lot of guys who actually, they train, and they eat. They try to do it right. I mean, for the most part, they check the boxes. In that 40 to 50 range. Mm-hmm. And still with them, because they're all doing blood work. I got about 40 guys doing blood work. We all it's like a thing. We're all like very curious about health. I actually just got the Grail test. I don't know if you know what that is, but it tests everything, like, predictable factors in your blood, Are you a likely candidate for things like cancers and other hormonal deficiencies? And Cancer Free, it actually came back last week, so I got the whole thing. So we've all been doing it. But I noticed that a lot of guys, who have done this, like I said, they check the boxes, they work out, they eat right, they do the things, but their test is in that range. It's like the 350 to, like 650 range. And some of them, truth be told, we've, tried doing some other things with the gym line, but why? Like, is it something else that we're doing?
It's a normal progression as we age, right? Obviously, the number one thing that testosterone does is sex drive, right? As well as muscle mass. And so those are things you need as a younger man, right? Especially if we look back hundreds of years, right? That man needed more muscle mass and for hunting and gathering and that sort of thing, protecting itself. And then the sex drive, obviously, for reproduction, right? That's our number one means of survival, is to reproduce and keep us going. So those are critical, but as you age, right, it's the normal progression. When you're 50 years old, you don't want to be fathering children. I mean, some do, Al Pacino, for example. But that child how long is that child going to live until you die? So you don't need to reproduce, and you're probably not out hunting and gathering any longer. Some younger one is doing that, right? So it's a normal progression with aging. But a lot of doctors feel that is the way it's supposed to go.
They're just naturally just letting it go.
And so, it's natural. And in fact, there's a camp who feels that's best. Who's the director of Titanic? What's his name?
Yeah, Cameron.
Yeah,
James Cameron.
He has a whole philosophy that, you feel better when your testosterone is low. You're no longer aggressive. And look, testosterone doesn't necessarily cause aggression. A certain type of testosterone that gets converted into DHT can cause testosterone. But having higher testosterone doesn't necessarily make you aggressive, right? It's kind of a misnomer. But anyway, there's a camp that feel that this is better for humans, right? And
I'm not part of that camp.
Obviously, neither am I, right? I keep my testosterone around 1,000 or so, but with alpha gym, not the point of this topic. But so there's things that also, other than just aging, that's going to come naturally. We're not even just talking about older men. Like I said, younger men are now seeing. We have a number of Gym Army members who've come to us and said, my testosterone's 300,
right?
And they're in their 20s,
right? No
reason for it to be.
Can I ask you something on that? Because do you think that, again, this is a theory that, some of the guys, they actually asked me to ask you a couple of questions, is like, is sexual activity something that can raise or lower your testosterone, how sexually active you are? And what I'm saying is,
well, acutely, not like for the long, not like it's not going to make a difference.
So basically, like, if you're not, having sex, 3-4 times a week, it's like not going to lower. Like, is there?
No. Okay. So, but being sexually aroused, right?
Right.
Will raise your testosterone. So, but acutely, right? For
only a short period of time.
Exactly, a couple hours.
It's not a measurable thing. So, like, if you
and the same with weightlifting. Weightlifting raises your testosterone, right? Particularly if you're going heavy and intense, you're going to see a bump in your testosterone. That's not going to keep your testosterone elevated for long periods. It's just going to give you what we call a transient increase. It goes up and then it goes right back down. But that bump is good, right? Especially if it's around your workouts and you're eating enough protein and you're, right? That's what's going to help instigate muscle protein synthesis. But back to the lowering of testosterone, there's a number of things that could also contribute other than aging, like we talked about toxins and things like that. But things like excessive cardio. A lot of guys, as they get older, right, are worried about their heart health that we talked about, right?
So do more cardio to increase your heart health.
What is the doctor going to tell you, right? What is the doctor going to tell you for exercise? They don't know diddly about weightlifting, okay? In fact, the American College of Sports Medicine didn't have resistance training recommendations in their exercise recommendation guidelines until after 2010. 2010. They weren't recommending resistance training until 2010, the American College of Sports Medicine. In fact, when I used to go to the conferences back in, the early 90s, it was all cardio. American College of Sports Medicine might have been
Just do
called
cardio.
American College of Cardio. That's all they focus on. That's all doctors thought was important, was your cardiovascular health.
Heart health.
That's all they would focus on, and that continues today, unless you've got a good doctor, and there's very few of them. So they'll typically recommend you do cardio. And even guys themselves will think, oh, I want to protect myself from heart disease. Yes, and you need cardio. Resistance training does not provide the same heart health benefits as cardio does. There's no doubt about that. You need some cardio. But if you're doing 90 minutes of cardio a day, 40 miles a week out there, that's excessive. That's too much. And the research shows that can lower your testosterone levels. Fiber. There's another one, right?
High fiber.
As you get older, right, you start having problems going to the bathroom, right?
Right.
What's the doctor recommend? A fiber supplement. You get more fiber in your diet, right? And so guys are eating 40, 50 grams of fiber a day. Now the recommendation, 20, 25, 30 grams per day is good. If you're up at 40, it's going to lower your testosterone levels. It's also going to increase sex hormone binding globulin, which attaches to testosterone. So when we measure testosterone, right, you've got your total testosterone. Then you've got your free testosterone, okay? That free is the testosterone that can go to your muscles and instigate muscle protein synthesis, muscle growth, right?
What's the range there on that? I don't mean to interrupt you.
On the free?
Yeah. What's a good range there?
It's probably somewhere around 25, maybe 50.
25 to 50
nanograms per deciliter for free, right?
Okay.
The free is the testosterone that's not bound to that sex hormone binding globulin that I talked about. When it's bound to that, it can't leave the bloodstream and go into the muscle. So when you have more sex hormone binding globulin, you have less free testosterone, and that's not a good thing. So things like too much fiber in your diet, too excessive cardio, right? Obviously stress, right, is a critical factor. So you want to do something like meditation, some kind of stress. You need, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to prescribe anything for a certain person. You got to find what relaxes you. Maybe it's, sitting at home watching one of your favorite shows, right? As big of a proponent I am is not sitting around and watching things. If that's going to help you relax, reduce your stress, then that's great. Whatever you can find to help reduce your stress. And then sleep is another critical issue, right? Just for overall general health, well-being, in feeling well.
Right. So a lot of guys, as they get older, 44, as I said, so I'm in that social circle of people, and a lot of guys my own age, they train, try to eat right, got families, and the whole, stuff that you have going on, of course. But everyone's always talking about, maintaining a high testosterone level. What are some things that they can do to try and maintain or take or eat or whatever it is to try and get the best natural testosterone levels and keep them there?
Yeah, I think the most critical thing that men should do is make sure they're eating enough fat. And again, when we talk about our cardiovascular health, what do a lot of doctors recommend? Lowering your fat intake, right? Well, we know that men who eat more fat welcome to the land of no mufflers. So we know that men who eat more fat have higher testosterone. And then here comes the fucking helicopters.
I don't think it should be. I don't think it's picking up.
It might show, but honestly, I think honestly calling it out is part of fun of the podcast.
Right.
Actually, that'd be a good clip.
Just for the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Got it.
We'll edit all the shorts and stuff.
Yeah, it's fine.
Sure, of course.
Obviously, it's not optimal, but
Right. So we know that men who eat more fat have higher testosterone levels. And I'm not talking about
Snickers
polyunsaturated, like omega-3s and 6s. I'm talking about monounsaturated and saturated fat in particular. You want to make sure you're eating enough saturated fat. It's critical for testosterone levels. Like I said, the research shows that men who eat higher amounts of fat have higher testosterone levels. So a low-fat diet is the last thing a guy wants to do because, again, that's going to lower your testosterone even further than it's already naturally lowering with your age. So what I recommend is making sure you're eating about 0.5 grams of fat, right? So if per pound of body weight. So if you're a 200-pound person, you want to eat about half your
about
weight
100 grams of fat
in grams of fat.
What are some of the foods that are like easy to kind of get that?
Peanut butter is good.
Peanut butter,
source of monounsaturated fat. I mean, beef,
right.
Bacon for saturated fat. You actually want to eat some saturated fat.
Right.
And again, doctors will tell you got to cut out saturated fat for your heart health. If you really look at the research, saturated fat is not the issue.
Is cholesterol an issue too? Because, some of the things I've been seeing, everything pops up like it does for all of us is like, cholesterol is an important thing for brain health.
It's an important thing for muscle.
Yeah. So, because a lot of doctors, your cholesterol. And, there's been, a series of people come across talking about like it's the inverse. Like, it's not, you don't.
And it depends. It depends on the person.
Right.
So if you have a family history of high cholesterol, you're likely, you're genetically predisposed. So for that person, sure, but it's not what they're eating. It's not, it's not the eggs. It's not the beef.
Because that's what they
causing.
think.
It's the body. The body's
right.
just producing too much cholesterol.
Right.
Okay. So if that's you, sure, limit your cholesterol intake. I would focus on keeping it low, but that's a small percentage of the population. For most people, you actually want to be eating cholesterol. In fact, there's research studies that show that people who are eating higher cholesterol while following a strength training program have better gains in muscle mass growth and in strength gains, those eating the high cholesterol diet versus a lower cholesterol diet. So cholesterol is important in the body. It's only if you are, like I said, you're predisposed to high levels. And that's not because you're eating too much. That's because your body's just producing.
So eating the old school, bacon and eggs, or hash browns in the morning, whatever it is actually probably a lot to that in the sense of avoiding it. It's probably better that you actually do eat it in the sense that
like I said, unless you're
predisposed to having
yes.
bad cholesterol. But that's a great way, like a normal breakfast. If you want to maintain high testosterone levels, don't avoid those types of foods.
Right.
Got it.
Yes. So I think that's one of the easiest things. And like I said, probably the most common one is that guys aren't just eating enough fat. And like I said, you could be eating too much fiber, right? We said that before, getting anything over 30 grams is going to be too excessive. And then the excessive cardio.
And then, it's not just about your diet, right? I mean, it's not just about saying, hey, listen, don't avoid fat because fat will actually help you with higher testosterones. But the offset of that is to make sure that you do exercise. Because I think,
of course,
right? Like you just can't sit around.
Exactly.
Eating,
no,
right?
and I mean, and if we're going to talk about men's health, the other thing is what's called sarcopenia, which is muscle loss, right? So as you age,
right?
regardless of what you do, your testosterone's going to drop and your muscle mass is going to drop. And those two things are related, but they're also independent of one another. You can keep your testosterone levels at 1,000, right? Like I do, but right now, my goal is not getting my biceps any bigger. It's maintaining them as much as I can.
How big are your biceps?
Because big enough. Actually, they're never big enough. That's the bodybuilder mentality. Never, ever big enough. But for a 57, I'll say they're big enough. So if I can just keep that, I'd be happy. So
Fair enough. Well, on some of the other things, I have some notes here too, because I wanted to make sure we hit all of these. So, I just told you I recently, for the first time in my life, which was weird for me, is I got my testosterone checked. What age should guys start getting their testosterone checked? And, is it too young, or is it not so much age related as about how you feel?
It's a little bit of both, I'd say. I'd say anybody who's hitting close, 40 years old, it's probably a good marker like 50, they recommend you get a colonoscopy, right? 50 is sort of regardless of whether you've got any symptoms, right? Just want to make sure. Probably around 40 is probably a good idea to make sure, just to check your testosterone, regardless, right? Regardless of how you feel. However, if you're 27 and you feel sluggish, you are, gaining body fat, you're, either losing muscle or not gaining enough muscle, you have low sex drive for a 20-something-year-old, right? Which should be pretty high. Then I would consider getting checked just to see, because like I said, there's a lot of young guys today that are in the 300s,
Right. So with, are there like, you mentioned, symptoms, low sex drive things. I mean, what are like the top 3? If somebody walked up and said, Jim, I think I have low T, what are like the 3 things that you would probably want to check the box and ask them the questions? Well, are you feeling like this? So what are the 3 signals that,
I'd say the first is sex drive, easiest one.
Yeah.
Right there,
It's just down.
Yeah. How is that sex drive? It's one of the easiest indicators. And then it's, what are your energy levels? Do you feel sluggish? Do you have issues with concentrating your focus? You feel that mental fog. Those are 3 good indicators that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's testosterone, but maybe you have an issue with your testosterone.
Anything physically, like, all of a sudden increased weight gain, things like that?
Yeah, obviously, if you're gaining body fat. But I mean, again, that's going to come as you age.
Right.
You're going to lose muscle. You're going to gain body fat, As we get older, the other thing guys need to do is focus on protein, because the same amount of protein that a 20-year-old can eat and build muscle off of is not going to do it for an older person.
Right.
We just don't, our muscle protein synthesis isn't as active. And so it takes more protein for an older individual to build muscle, same amount of muscle as a younger person. But, how many older people focus on protein?
Right.
And in fact, a lot of people think that the older you get, the less protein you need because you're less active.
So that is true. Like the older you get, because you've always made a recommendation anywhere between, 1 to 2, optimal 1.5 grams per pound of body weight for protein. As you get older,
you want to be like 1.5 at least.
At minimum, as you get
minimum
older.
1. Let's just get everybody to 1. Okay?
Fair enough.
That's 1. So if you're 200 pounds, it's 200 grams of protein.
Which people think that you can get. I hear this all the time. Well, you just eat that. And I'm like, do you realize what you'd have to eat, like, to get, in most people's, their diets, they're clearly they're not even getting like maybe even 40 or 50 grams of protein. But I mean, like, that's a lot of protein essentially.
For the average person, to me, it doesn't seem like,
right.
Because my meals are focused around protein. But I mean, that's the easiest thing instead of trying to count grams. When you have breakfast, it shouldn't be a bowl of oatmeal and you call it breakfast.
Right.
Okay, sure, there's some protein in oatmeal, but that's not enough protein.
Right.
There's a few grams, maybe 5. Tops.
What should your breakfast be?
I would recommend some eggs, although I'm
allergic.
I'm
eggs,
allergic
egg whites?
to eggs.
Well, yeah.
I would go with whole eggs. Definitely whole eggs. Because the yolk that, again, we're getting to the fat and the cholesterol area, but that's where all the vitamins, the minerals are stored in
whole
the
eggs.
yolk. So whole eggs, definitely.
Right. So like whole eggs, like maybe some avocado.
Yeah, and there's
bacon.
studies showing that those who are getting whole eggs versus egg whites gain more muscle, more strength as well.
Right. So like typical breakfast, like what would you recommend? Like, hey, Mike, all right, eat, 3 whole eggs, avocado.
Yeah, I mean, remember, like an egg is only going to be, 6 grams of protein.
Right.
So if you have 3 eggs, it's only 18.
Right.
It's not even 20 grams of protein. So
make sure you have your protein.
So if you're a person who likes typical, breakfast foods, you like to get up and have, eggs, like eating a chicken breast just isn't going to do it for you in the morning. I mean, that's what I eat. I eat like steak and chicken, This morning I had pork chops. for breakfast,
Really?
for example. I mean, I'm allergic to eggs, so
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons. But I'm about getting in my protein. So I would say if you're only eating 3 or 4 eggs, again, that's 20 grams of protein. I'd have a protein shake with that as well, and then some slow digesting carbs, oatmeal, whatever.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about different ways that you can keep your testosterone high, or signs and symptoms of whether or not you have low testosterone, and kind of flipping some things on their head. You mentioned earlier that as we get older, obviously heart disease, everyone says a heart disease, the number one killer, of everybody. So let's focus on that by doing more cardio and decreasing your fat. But by those, recommendations, as doctors have been saying, you're saying those are actually the 2 leading causes to lower your testosterone as you get older, right? So, all right. So testosterone's an issue for a lot of guys as they get older. I know that you've always been a big advocate. Obviously, we own a supplement company together. It's no surprise to anybody. But when it comes specifically to taking supplements, because so many people are like, I just jump on TRT, and I don't have a problem with TRT. I think at all.
That's the individual's choice.
Right.
That's their right.
But like for me, okay, like I have not subscribed to that at all. Like I want to do it naturally.
We're on the same page,
right? I want to do it naturally.
And more for me is just, if my testosterone levels weren't responding to diet, exercise, and supplements, then sure.
Well, that's the thing, because a lot of people say, oh, Jim's not natural. I'm like, dude, no, he is. He just, like, the guy walks around at, like,
but I'm not. I'm also not that. I'm like 205.
I know, but everyone, come on, dude, everyone says, "Oh, look how shredded you
lighting and angles.
You can't be shredded at 57 and have those." And I'm like, dude, he's not on TRT. Trust me, I've known the guy for 20 some years. Like back in the day when he was competing, different story. None of my business. I don't know, but like,
of course,
he was been walking around like this. And the funny thing about when people say that,
I have a serious heart condition.
That's the other thing too.
I literally can't.
Like you die. Like you die. But like what I tell people when they say, there's no way that guy's not on, PEDs or whatever. I'm like, dude, I knew that guy for 6 years, and I didn't know he like literally was in shape as much as you are, or that he even had a tattoo. I'm like, you put like a long sleeve shirt on Jim. I'm like, he just looks like a normal dude.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, he does. I'm like, but you take it off. I'm like, he pops well. You ever see those guys who pop well? They walk around like just kind of not looking at everything. They flex and they just flare up. I'm like, that's Jim. He's not walking around like a brick that every angle looks the same. I'm like, those guys are on PEDs, but yeah. So we got off topic there, but I really, and it's come up, Jim, like I told you before, like it's, why don't you just hop on TRT? I'm like, I don't want to do it, and I really believe in the herbs and the nutrients and the lifestyle choices. Besides doing that, I'm big on kind of cheating, and I haven't gone down that route. I don't think it's cheating, but I just think that you can control your own method of doing things naturally. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that you would recommend, specifically to take? We talked about diet, we talked about lifestyle changes, but specifics on, the supplement and herb side of things. What are some things, and it's not a product plug, it's just literally like if someone wants to go out and buy these ingredients and try these things out, what would you say to them?
Yeah. There's plenty of ingredients that have support in the research for raising testosterone levels. And, like we're talking about, my levels are high 7s to 1200, depending on what supplements I'm using. My father, who's going to be 81 in January, his testosterone is 1,000. No TRT. Right. Just using the supplements. 1,000 at 81. The doctors are absolutely floored. So yeah, it's possible. So my number one picks are fenugreek is the first one. There's just a brand new review on fenugreek, not just for testosterone. They concluded it can raise testosterone, improve performance, help with body fat, right? Sugar, glucose control. Fenugreek is a great ingredient. ashwagandha. Now, everybody knows ashwagandha is this Ayurvedic herb that has performance benefits, numerous health benefits, but it can also help with your testosterone levels. Now, fenugreek is going to work by directly increasing the production of testosterone. So you make testosterone from cholesterol, right? And that happens in your testicles, main place that happens. So with fenugreek, it helps take more of the cholesterol and convert it into testosterone. It can also help reduce the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So if you have testosterone levels, they normally get converted into estrogen. By stopping that conversion, you maintain higher testosterone levels. Okay, so that's two ways that fenugreek works. Ashwagandha, on the other hand, the main way it helps to increase your testosterone levels and in the body is by protecting those testicles, literally from oxidative damage, so that they can convert more cholesterol into sperm and testosterone, right? So that's fenugreek. You've got ashwagandha. You've got Uricoma longifolia, some know it as Tongkat Ali. Okay, another one, and all these ingredients have recent, not just numerous research papers on them, but recent ones confirming their effectiveness. Uricoma longifolia was just shown to increase in a meta-analysis. This is where they take all the studies and look at them and confirm whether or not it is actually effective. Uricoma longifolia is another great one that increases testosterone. Shilajit, a lot of people are starting to hear about Shilajit,
right? Yeah,
which is this mineral complex that they actually get up in the mountains. It grows in between rocks. It's this, like
it's really hard to get
mineral composite. It looks like tar, literally. But it has compounds in there that can also help increase your testosterone levels. DHEA is another one a lot of people know about that can raise. And what's interesting about DHEA is that while all these other ones that I talked about work on your testicles producing more testosterone, there's your adrenal glands also produce this DHEA. So you have another gland in the body other than the testicles that's producing something that can lead to higher testosterone levels. DHEA, you take more DHEA, helps those glands convert it into
so it's like a different pathway to increase your test.
What's that?
It's like a different pathway.
Different pathway, right? So if you're taking ingredients that help your testicles convert more cholesterol into testosterone, and then you're taking DHEA, you can have an additive effect.
Got it. Okay. So now, there's been skepticism and people say, oh, okay, Jim, you can't really see an increase in your testosterone. You can't say that fenugreek has data and research to show a 20% or whatever. And then, Uricoma has 30%, and then put them together and then
say, it's going to be 40 plus
there's going to be a cumulative effect of testosterone. And there's been, haters out there and trolls saying, oh, Jim, you can't see testosterone levels be raised naturally. And I think that because, I don't like skeptics. Number one, it's kind of like do a little bit of homework first before you have an opinion. What would you say to that in terms of the ones who say you can't do it naturally?
You can't. I mean, you can. Obviously, every individual is going to have a different response and different results, right? Depending on their own biochemistry. But in general, like I said, that's the reason they did these meta-analysis studies on these ingredients. They looked at all, instead of just looking at one study that said, it raised it by 20%. Done, right? You can't rely on one study. You have to gather up enough studies that show, yes, and this study increased it by 20%. This study increased testosterone by 30%. This study increased it by 15%. And then they do another study on those. They take all the data.
So that's the thing. People say, one study, but you're saying
this one study is a combination of maybe
a whole
20
bunch of studies. See, that's where people don't understand. I didn't even understand that until you just said it.
Yeah, so a meta-analysis is where you take all the results and then redo basically the data to look at what you're getting, right? Or a review study even. Or review studies, they review all the studies on that, what they found, and then they make a conclusion based on these multiple studies, right? Because you may have a study on a ingredient that increased testosterone by 20%, in one study and then did 0 in another study. And then in another study, it lowered it.
Right.
But then in another study, it increased it by 10%.
So how do you figure out which one's right?
You have to look at the methodology. You know, that's the other thing with studies is, as a scientist who's actually done research is different than someone who, you know, got a bachelor's or a master's degree and kind of knows the area, but hasn't really done any research.
Right.
Because you need to be able to look at the study and say, oh, well, here's a flaw in the study. They used this individual, or they didn't use, you know, this individual, or the stats that they ran are kind of wonky. So as a scientist, you can kind of go through, and that's what these scientists do. They look at the validity of each of these studies. But then they make a final conclusion. And so there wouldn't be studies showing, you know, the conclusion on some of these is, you know, things like DHA around 10%. But again, this isn't one study showing that. This is study
Multiple
after study
studies.
and they're not all showing 10%. Some are showing 20. But averaging about 10%. Fenugreek, 20, 30%.
Right. So when you're referencing all these studies, I was saying, you know,
I mean, there's studies on ashwagandha that have doubled testosterone. Ashwagandha alone.
Right. So the ones who are saying it can't be done naturally, and you're suggesting or implying to people that you know, there's no way that they're doubling their testosterone. There's no way that they're seeing the increases that you're saying that you're seeing. You're saying, well, based on the research, based on the data, it does actually conclude and show that. However, in taking together
in the real world,
because we've seen that. I mean, I have friends who've seen that.
And so I've been talking a lot lately about you'll see videos where I say double your testosterone with Alpha Gym X now.
That's not for everyone. Saying people have literally told us they've showed blood work.
But the point I'm making,
right?
Yes. But the point I'm making is, I'm not just talking about like when do we release Alpha Gym X?
In January 2024.
Right. So almost a year, right? I'm not basing that on Alpha Gym X. I'm basing that off of the original Alpha Gym. Mm-hmm. We released that 10 years ago. Right. We have 10 years of data from customers showing that Alpha Gym, and again, what's Alpha Gym versus Alpha Gym X? Alpha Gym X is literally Alpha Gym with 3 of the ingredients, their dose is increased, and the addition of 3 other ingredients. So it's literally, so we saw doubling. We saw customers who doubled their testosterone on the original Alpha Gym.
Right.
Okay? So 10 years of data. And again, not everybody doubles their testosterone.
Right.
Some by 40%, some by 50%.
It varies.
On average, I'd say 60% with the old Alpha Gym, right? We don't have enough data yet on the Alpha Gym X to say what the average is, but the average increase in Alpha Gym was 60%.
Right.
60% increase in testosterone. That's somebody who's 500, that's almost 800. That's going from 500 to 800.
And to be clear, it's not a claim that we can legitimately sell and put it on, but it's just the response based on there's 130,000 Gym Army members a part of this Facebook group. And we have put out not only just the regular Alpha Gym, but the Alpha X. And I'll say this, you know, the amount of reviews, not coming on like a review put on a product page, but people literally just showcasing posting their blood work and saying, I've gone to, you know, this clinic, I was here, I started taking it, and, you know, a couple weeks, however long, I was at 300, went up to 600. I had a friend, and I had a couple friends, but one in particular comes running into the gym, my buddy Billy. And this guy, you know, he just turned 50, and he does everything right. You know him. Yep. You met him. And he, you know, his test was at 400 at the beginning of the year because he actually did the New Year's challenge with me. He was the one who did it with me last year. And I remember, you know, he's like, I'm committed. I'm going to do it with you. I'm like, well, you know, we haven't launched this product yet. And he's crazy about getting his blood work done. He does it all the time. And so he went and got it done. His test was around 400. He was like 402, 403, something like that. So we had a bottle, hadn't been released yet. I said, bro, just start taking this, okay? Now, he finished a challenge with me. He trains. He doesn't drink. He's crazy about, like, you put a cold plunge, like, installed it in his house. Like, he's that guy, you know, like Mr. Health and Fitness. So he comes in, you know, a couple weeks ago, and he hadn't had his blood work done for tests for a while. But this one, he did the same test I did. It's called the Grail test. It's what he convinced me to do. So I did it because of him. So he comes in, he goes, dude, I just got the Grail test. You know, I'm cancer-free. He goes, bro, my test, 958. And I'm like, you on TRT? I forgot that, like, you know, back in January, that, like, well, they not forget. I figured he was, right, but it wasn't like he was coming and asking me for bottles all the time. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, so he was going and buying.
You forget who's taking it.
Right, exactly, right. So he comes in and I'm like, are you on TRT? He goes, no, dude. And these guys were here. The guys shooting right now were there. He goes, no, dude. All he's been taking is Alpha X. And I'm like, well, then we need to shoot your testimonial right now. And he went from, you know, low 400s to 958. Now,
that's more than a double.
But that's in 8 months.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it was at month 3 or 4 or 5. All I know is at the beginning he had it tested, gave him a bottle, started taking it. Today he's 958.
Right.
So, I don't know. Do you think that's something else?
No. Like I said, my father's 1,000. Same thing. He went to the doctor, was 400, somewhere around there. It's like, oh, that's not bad.
Right.
You know, for, I don't know when he was probably 70 then. And so my dad asked for the Alpha because he knew we had a test booster. He started taking that. Now he's 1,000.
Yeah. How old is
his doctor wants him to, like, when did you start taking TRT? He's like, I'm not. Now he'll be 81 in January.
81 in January.
1,000. His testosterone is 1,000 at 81.
Well, realistically, I mean, I think that there's always going to be options and alternatives for people. And if you want to go down the TRT,
yeah, I mean, you could, TRT's fine, but again, it's permanent.
Once you're on,
you know, once you're on. So when you take TRT, it shuts down your own. Okay, if you're making 300, your levels are 300, right? And you get on TRT, your levels are now 0, even though your blood work says 1,000 or whatever, right? Your own body is producing pretty much zero. Okay, it shuts down, and then you get, you know, testicle shrinkage, which is, you know, that's fine. You can take HCG, which helps prevent some of that. But when you go off TRT, depending on how long you've been on it and how old you are, your system may not kick back in. Right. Again. And so
even if you take everything else that we just talked about and do those things, it's probably not going to, or it may, you can't guarantee, but it might not, you might not produce your own again.
Yeah. Or at least an adequate amount. Right. So again, that's one option, but, you know, like we've talked about, you can raise it naturally. And so, you know, my line of thinking is, why shut down my own system?
Right, that's
prematurely. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let me ride it for as long as I can. My father's at 81 and he's still riding his own testosterone production. It's possible, you know, and I, you know, I'm his son, so there's a good chance that I could, you know, go into my, you know, 80s or however long I end up living without having to jump on TRT because of the, you know, fenugreek, the ashwagandha, the shilajit.
And the lifestyle change.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is just that, like, you know, it's for overall men's wellness, especially as you're getting older. And I'm certainly, you know, feel it. Not, you know, you always told me, like, just wait. And I remember you telling that to me all the time.
Well, wait, you're how old?
44 now.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw the research, but they say that there's 2 ages where you age the most, and one is 44.
Thanks.
And the other is 60. So I'm staring at 60 in a few years. So I've already been through the 44. But I would personally, I would say it was 50. I think at 44 I was.
Yeah, we started this at 44.
You know what I mean? I really didn't start feeling older until I was in my probably.
I don't 50. Feel older. I mean, that's the difference. The only thing I feel old about is that honestly, I can't see.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Like my vision is certainly gone. But I think that, you know, looking at your lifestyle of just diet and exercise and what that diet is. Don't just do cardio. Make sure you do the weights. Make sure that you're eating the proper fats.
Yeah, and the cardio just doing cardio isn't just about your testosterone levels. Like, you're losing muscle. Cardio is not going to do shit for your muscle. I'm sorry, unless you're running hills or sprinting on a bike, which is going to build your legs. And it's not going to do anything for your upper body. It's not going to. You need resistance training. Every man, every woman needs resistance training, particularly as we age, because you start losing muscle mass, and that's where your quality of life starts to dip. You suddenly can't open doors, heavy doors. You can't carry packages. You can't carry your kids or your grandkids, right?
Right.
Because the loss of muscle mass. And so the only way to combat that is resistance training, lifting heavy things.
Right.
It could be bands. It could be machines. As long as you're, having some resistance, and then you're eating enough protein.
Right. And then making sure that you're looking at certain things.
And then, for men, making sure your testosterone levels are optimal.
Right. And supplements do work. I want people to understand that. Like you've always said this, when it comes down to supplementing, the one takeaway I can say, the biggest thing I've learned in all these years was you talk about the 5 pillars of the supplementation, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have a goal, whatever that goal is, it's looking at the ingredients, the type of those ingredients,
form,
the dose, how much of those ingredients, how they work together.
Synergies, right? And then timing.
When you take them. And I think that's where so many people, especially the critics out there that say you can't do these things and achieve these goals by taking natural supplements, and I said at the beginning, say at the end, I think that there's going to be a health and fitness craze, but there's a few things that are going to happen from it. One, it's going to be great. I think that's going to be great. The other thing is I really believe, Jim, that there's a need for voices like you more so than ever, because as you know, when the feeding frenzy of health and fitness comes in, you get a lot of, bullshit in people's opinions.
Yeah,
and
we see it already on social media.
We're starting to see it. Oh, I'm an expert. I'm
fear
this.
mongers.
Exactly.
This nonsense.
You
don't touch the receipts that you get at the store.
Right.
It's like, well, your skin is actually your number one barrier to prevent your body from absorbing things.
Right.
So, and there's no data. There's no data showing that receipt touching has caused. Again, right? They mean well, right? Yes, there's toxins in the receipts, but it's really not
But that's even extended down, because I've even asked you on certain things. I see things trending, like the forms of vitamin B12.
Chris Gethin just did a receipt thing.
Oh, he did do a receipt thing? Well, yeah, there you go. Right.
Again, like I said, it's not sure, if you look at the toxins in the receipts, it's there, but sure, you're touching it, but your skin is an amazing thing. That's its job. It's your first line of defense. It doesn't just let everything in, or it wouldn't be doing its job.
Right.
So anyway.
But it's true, though, and that's my point.
And again, they mean well, but again, they're causing a lot of fear that doesn't need to be.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think to your point, they mean well, but they're also trying to get awareness and be controversial, right?
And just make content. That's the, you know what I'm saying? And so,
I mean, the nice thing is like the way I look at it is because I've always said that I've represented like the masses of the consumers who are most likely to take shit seriously when it comes to their health, fitness, and everything we talked about. But I have an advantage because I can just text, call, ask you anything. I remember there was a whole thing on vitamin B12 that came up, and it was like this whole, don't take the, cyanocobalamin, take the methylcobalamin and all that. And I'm like, Jim, what is this?
Cyanide.
And you're like, oh my God. And dude, and it's catching fire so much where people were asking me,
you actually consume cyanide in your daily diet. Just not enough to cause you a problem, because the body is an amazing thing again.
Right. I remember you told me, you're like, actually, the methylcobalamin is the bad one. It's like, you don't want to take that one as opposed to the cyanocobalamin on the vitamin B12. And I remember and I'm like, oh, wow. But there's people out there putting shit out there like that. And it's not accurate.
Yeah.
So like.
I mean, unfortunately for me, like you said, I'm a research scientist.
You're not
right?
consuming that. Yeah.
I graduated University of Connecticut, did a postdoctoral research fellowship at Yale School of Medicine. However, I have a supplement line. So for the last 10 years, people have been saying the only reason I recommend a gram of protein per pound of body weight or more is to sell them more protein. Right. Yet now everybody's finally catching on. Right. Now
it's kind of like creatine, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yes. Right. If only we could take more creatine. It's like people, you've been saying that for
how long now, right? But
years.
Everybody was saying you're just trying to sell your supplements. And it's like, no, I'm actually trying to help. In fact, I never wanted to start a supplement line.
I know.
Ever. But
that was my fault.
The supplement, yes, thank you. The supplement industry back in 2010 and 11 and 12, we launched in 2013, was so problematic that it, if it continued in the direction, they were telling people that their supplements were concentrated, super concentrated, right, which is an outright lie. And that was kind of like my final straw. I'm like, okay, we need to show people what a real supplement looks like, right, what a real pre-workout should have. And, that's why I started a supplement company. Unfortunately, it just makes people think that I'm just trying to peddle my supplements, but I'm just trying to peddle help to people.
Well, I remember you and I, when we first talked about that, I went to you and we talked about doing it because there were some things, and you're like, I'm not that guy. I don't want to be like biased. I'm the unbiased guy, the unbiased expert and everything. I said, Jim, but the problem is you can't explain to people what to take without showing them when it doesn't exist in the first place. And I'm like, it's not being a sellout. It's helping people because I was that guy. Dude, I was taking every other supplement company and I didn't have an option, but I didn't want it. I also knew that I didn't have the time to go out and take the individual ingredients and do all these things like we talked about testosterone right now, okay? Mm-hmm. If we didn't have this product that could truly help, you would be going out and looking on the shelves for fenugreek, uricoma, ashwagandha,
right? Shilajit, DHEA.
Right.
You'd have 6 bottles just for your testosterone, let alone a multivitamin.
Right. Correct.
Do you want some creatine? Obviously, correct, you should have creatine, beta-alanine, branch chain.
And that's where I think the
convenience
comes
that's
in.
how it started. Literally, right. I was giving people a formula for a pre-workout.
Yeah, I still have the articles framed in my office before we even had gym subs. I mean, and that's the funny thing is, what's interesting is we just talked about it before we shot the podcast, but there's this, the frame that I have in my office is one of the articles, and it tells like the greatest story of like the evolution. So it's like, this is what Jim used to do. And it was talking about, betaine power, right? Or B power. And it was talking about the benefits of betaine and and then it shows, that was just the article. And then below there's another article talking about post-workout where you talk about creatine, alpha-lipoic acid, and dextrose. And then shows my part where I came in and I would, put in, work with the other brands to try and merchandise it. And so I told the story and I looked up. It had been a while and I actually read the article because I can't see again. So I kind of got up, I squinted, and I looked and it was talking about like, betaine actually enhances creatine production as well. And here's why, that's the reason why, some supplement companies will probably try to put both in. And I'm like, oh my God, like that'd be a great video to do. Remember we just talked about it and you just shot it. So you've been talking about this stuff for a long time. And I want people to understand that. It's like, yes, do you own a supplement company? Of course. Why wouldn't you? Who's more qualified to make recommendations than somebody like you? But when you actually listen to your advice and you apply it, like I said, I'm 44, but I still feel like I'm 22. And all I've done is I'm probably the person who is the most normal type of person to listen to your advice, try to apply it. I mean, before we shot here, I just did 6 weeks of sick arms, week 6, day 1, right? Like I'm still doing your stuff. And not because it's self-serving but people ask me all the time because they look at me like 44, pretty good shape, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I just do what Jim says and I take our shit. And then they do too. And next thing you know, it's like, eureka. They have like, oh my God, what have I been missing? Like, it's just simple.
Yeah, no, I mean, remember Lai, our publisher at Muscle and Fitness, you know, I had been writing articles and he had been reading them, and then, you know, no one really kind of, you know, knew what I did until Lai came to me and said, you know, I feel like crap.
Yep.
Can you give me a supplement regimen?
I remember that.
And, you know, I literally gave him this daily supplement regimen, what to take in the morning with breakfast, in the afternoon, at night. And what did he say?
Oh, he changed his life.
Yeah.
And this is my former boss, publisher, Laia Clark, who was the publisher of Muscle and Fitness. Yeah, I was with him every day. And he had the thing. He's like, and that's when I literally I'm like, it can't be this complicated, because he would come in and he's got his baggies and he's got his pill boxes and he's taking stuff all day long. And I'm like, and I'm 20 some years old. I'm like, isn't there a bottle I can just take?
One and done.
Like one and done to simplify it. And I think that's what you've been able to do. And I want to thank you, but I also want people to listen. Please just listen. Like, you know, the information that we're trying to give to you people and just have conversations is like what I think you guys deserve to hear from him. And that's the most important thing. And right now, this is a big topic for me, is the men's wellness. You know, family guy, married, 3 kids, active, involved in everything. I don't sleep well. You know, I'm working. I try to find time to train, which I always find time to train. But there is a manageable lifestyle to try and make sure that you are getting the most and being the best man that you possibly can on a daily basis. And you've given me that opportunity in more ways than you can probably know. Yeah,
and it starts with exercise, nutrition, and then supplements can help.
Right.
It's that simple. I mean, there's no magic, there's no lies here. I'm literally producing things that I want for myself, for my own benefit.
Why would you produce?
I can't trust anybody else to make it that way. So I make it myself, and you know, I offer it to everyone else, so that they can also benefit.
Awesome.
It's literally the only reason we started this.
Correct. Well, Jim, thanks so much. We hit a lot of great points. I think we're going to get a lot of good content out of this. But we'll do this again. We'll sit down and cover some other topics, and more to come on the JYM LYFE Podcast. Take care.